What are the tasks before the new governor? What can we expect from Raghuram Rajan under such trying circumstances? Subir Gokarn, currently Director of Research at Brookings India, and someone who has been there, done that, is with us. Dr. Gokarn, do you foresee anytime soon that the new Reserve Bank governor will be able to trim this 10.25 MSF rate?
Well, I think the question really is how committed is the Reserve Bank to this new regime which they went into in July, which was to move from a growth inflation management strategy to now what is clearly an exchange rate and inflation management strategy. Obviously, the two are consistent, because if you worry about inflationary pressures coming from a depreciated rupee, then raising interest rates to both address the rupee and the inflation threat are internally consistent. But in the process, the growth objective is being obviously put on the back burner, because higher interest rates would impact directly on growth, and I think those risks have been pointed out in the discussion following these actions. So now the question is, do you stay with this regime because you believe that it is ultimately going to help to stabilize both the exchange rate situation and the inflation situation? Or do you say, well, this was temporary, which is one signal that has come out of the system, and at some point we have to go back to worrying about the growth inflation dynamic, which means going back to easier liquidity conditions and consequently bringing the call rate down to the middle of the corridor as opposed to the top end where it is now. So that decision, I think, is a critical one, and obviously Dr. Rajan is going to have to decide fairly quickly on whether he's going to use the first few days of his term to signal very categorically a return to the more traditional management or objectives that the RBI is trying to manage.
Dr. Gokarn, good morning, and thanks for being with us on the show. One pressing concern that the market has is whether Raghuram Rajan plans to dismantle any of these, mismatch of measures that we've gotten in the past, including the hike in short-term interest rates. What is your view on whether there will be any reversal of that, these measures that were used to prop up the rupee?
Well, I think I don't see it really so much as a question of whether the new governor will use this as an opportunity to dismantle anything. Each measure has to be seen in terms of what it was expected to do and whether it has done that. And if you look at the entire series of actions taken, whether liquidity tightening or the restrictions on capital outflows by residents, both individuals and companies, the question that has to be asked is, what have they achieved? Have they helped to stabilize the rupee? If that was the sort of primary objective of all of these things, have they helped to achieve that? And if they haven't, then does it make sense to roll them back and either look for other ways to do this, or to say, look, let's stop worrying about the currency and let's focus on other things, and that's also an option. I think the point I've been making right through this period is that all of these short-term measures really have meaning and have significance only if they are used to supplement long-term measures, structural measures. And the structural issue that we have to deal with is the current account deficit. Without making any concrete moves to address that, you can keep experimenting with short-term measures to stabilize the currency, and some of them will work for some period of time, others will not work, but at the end of the day you're not going to get a robust enduring solution to the problem, because the pressure is not being addressed. So I think if you look at a combination, and this is perhaps the new governor's big challenge, how do you persuade the rest of the policy-making establishment that unless we address the current account deficit forcefully and quickly, anything that the central bank does to address to deal with the exchange rate is at best going to have short-lived benefits, if at all.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the combination that has to fall into place. That's the combination that has to be brought to bear on this issue.
Unfortunately,
and I hope that, things move quickly on this.
Unfortunately, Dr. Gokarn, neither did the steps give the RBI any breathing space, nor did the government use that breathing space to do anything effective in terms of cutting fiscal deficit. But Rajan somewhat through his writings and through your personal interaction, and you know the RBI very well. What difference is he going to make? Is he a market-oriented man? Is he a dovish guy? How will he change the thinking in the cream of RBI?
Well, I think if you go by his public views on the central bank's objectives, and I think the best reference for that is the Committee on Financial Sector Reforms, which he chaired. But since then, obviously, he's also made many statements relating to central bank priorities and so on. And I don't really see him as somebody who's fundamentally going to change the inflation priority that has emerged during Dr. Subbarau's regime. And to the extent that people are expecting a sort of 180-degree switch to now forget about inflation because it's supply side and let's move on to worrying about growth, I really don't read that kind of switch in anything that he's said on the issue. So that would be my take, that in terms of inflation management, I think continuity is more likely than any dramatic change. But we're talking about unusual, abnormal circumstances today when it comes to dealing with the multiple pressures, the exchange rate, and the consequences that has on the basic objectives, growth and inflation. So here, there is obviously room for trying different things. And my sort of preference in this situation would always be to go for expanding the inflow of dollars, and I've written on this, I've spoken about this, as opposed to reducing the supply of rupees, which is what was done. If those liquidity measures are found now to be not doing the job and some rollback is done, the problem doesn't go away. You still have to worry about the sort of free fall of the currency, and that means then I think going for expanding the dollar pool. We've heard talk about sovereign borrowings and other ways to do this. Perhaps that opportunity or that channel will start to get a fresh look, since so far there seems to have been relative, reluctance to go down that route. So I think we'll have to look for somewhat different perspectives on dealing with the immediate situation. But in a more normal situation, assuming that emerges at some point, his views are, I think, basically that the central bank should be primarily focused on managing inflation and maintaining, as has often been said, a low and stable inflation rate.
All right, Dr. Gokarn, thank you as always for joining us and giving us your view on what the new RBI governor will bring to the table.